good evening. It is Monday, March 11th, 2024. You are watching Legit Ladies Spill the Tea on legitpodcast.com. If you're joining us on YouTube, please go ahead and like and subscribe and support all of our amazing hosts. It's at Legit Podcast, and then on all social media at Legit Podcast, DOTCOM. Spell it out. We are also now streaming on Parapost Network Central. So I'm going to bring on my lovely co-host for this show, Krista. Krista, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Nice I'm good. I know. So I have been out for 2 weeks. I'm sick. I apologize for my absence, but you had two great shows with King Mike Owl. And now he is sick. Unfortunately, he's out sick. So I am back. But while I was out and I was watching your shows on alpha males and alpha females, it got me thinking because I felt like an outlier. I think I would consider myself an alpha female, but I'm not feeling so alpha right now. And I think a lot of that has to do with coming out of an emotionally, mentally, and financially abusive relationship. So you and I kind of made the decision to go with a little bit of a heavier topic tonight. And we're going to talk about insecurity and how we function in a relationship after abuse. And to help us do that, we are bringing back the wonderful Sarah G. Sarah, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a little nervous about tonight. I don't know about you guys. It's the first time I'm getting a little personal, so I'm very appreciative that I have you ladies here to support me through this. We're going to be talking about a lot. We're going to be talking about complex post-traumatic distress disorder, which I've been diagnosed with. We're going to talk about gaslighting, narcissistic abuse. And hopefully the audience can weigh in. And again, we might be sharing our own personal experiences and thoughts, and we are all happen to be women. But I want to make sure it's clear that these things can happen to men as well. And let me throw this up before I get going. We're going to leave this up here. The hotline for the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. So, without further ado, I don't know, Krista, I know you prepared lots of notes. Did you want to start with a question or an opening topic?
So I think the things we wanted to touch on tonight, or some of the things, like you said, what you just said, the gaslighting, the narcissistic abuse, trusting your intuition coming out of an abusive relationship. How do you know when it's time to move on? How do you even heal from an abusive relationship? And there's so many factors. It's emotional, it's physical. And then when is it time to move on? When do you know it, when you're ready? And then how do you trust your next partner? Because some of us want to take those emotions and that abusive relationship into the next relationship. So what are the steps that we take before we even are ready to move on? So I think that that's really important to address tonight. I think we've all been there on some level. And so I think it was super important to address tonight. So I love that you brought that to the surface, because I think we've all been there on some level. So I'm excited for tonight's show. I think, like you said, on some level, we've all experienced it, whether it be when we were younger, when we're older. So I think everyone can kind of relate, men and women, on some level.
Right. And I think the point is that it's okay to not be okay. I know we've talked about our personal experiences. I'm kind of so I'm in that stage of healing and figuring out how to heal and kind of how to move forward with having a new relationship, because like all the triggers are still there. So maybe let's start with gaslighting. So Sarah G, have you ever had any experience with gaslighting?
Honestly, it's not a topic that a lot of people would be able to say that relationship or that person or whatever has been gaslighting until after the fact.
Right.
What I mean, until you're really steeped in understanding what gaslighting really means, it happens all the time. And whether or not it's in the intent to hurt somebody or whether it's negating the other person's feelings, either way, it is supposed to hurt you in some aspect, right? Either people don't mean to do that, they do it anyway. So I would say that gaslighting happens a lot in relationships only because you think about yourself first and foremost. It's not to the point sometimes as that narcissistic person or abusive person, but it is a form of abuse. And I think that it's hard to pinpoint sometimes what it looks like. And the only thing that I can really recommend with that is to say, hey, that really hurt my feelings. That really wasn't exactly what was going on here. And as long as you're telling the truth to yourself and yourself alone, sometimes that's enough. Right? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. Your internet fixed itself right at the end. Mike is calling you Sarah C3PO.
Here we go. He loves to make fun of us.
You were in and out every word. So you were like, yes, you were doing the robot thing. So gaslighting, in my experience, was a very regular occurrence. So I think there's levels of it, right? And people do it in friendships and they do it in other types of relationships at work and everything. So we're basically making someone believe that what is their truth is not real at all. And I've had it go so far as, and I had this conversation with a friend the other day, that I used to be told how I was feeling and convinced how I was feeling. And it literally would make me feel crazy, because then I started to not be able to trust my own feelings and my own intuitions. And I feel like I'm still in that a little bit, because you get told you're crazy, you're remembering this wrong, that's not what happened, telling me I said things that I know I wouldn't say. Not only do I know I didn't say them, but they just don't sound like something I would say. Krista, does that make sense to you? Have you been through that?
Absolutely. You just hit all the classic signs of gaslighting. They'll tell you you're crazy. They'll flip scenarios on you. They'll get really defensive. They'll tell you you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you're imagining things. So you just literally hit the definition on the head. And that's classic signs of gaslighting. So you experienced all the things. You weren't crazy. It wasn't you. It was someone flipping the script on you, for sure.
So ladies, tell me, Sarah G, if you want to start. So how do I go about trusting myself in a new relationship and trusting my intuition? Because I think it's been a decade that I've just been told everything that I'm thinking and feeling is wrong. And you try to ground yourself at first, but I'll tell you, that's gone. That ability is gone now. So what do I do? That's a big question.
I know. And if I blank out, I'm sorry, it's very windy and I have to switch over my Wi-Fi. But anyway, to answer your question, there really isn't anything you can do in specific except give yourself time. You just give yourself time. You are feeling that you are being pretty, oh, you should meet this guy. Oh, I've got the great person. And you don't feel that you're in the right space, then go ahead and use that voice and say no. If you need to harm yourself and not go out and be a swamp witch for a little while, that's okay too. It's all about your individual healing. So don't put too much pressure on yourself, and little by little, that intuition about what it is that you feel that you need to do will come back.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please do.
So I think one of the biggest things for us is taking time for yourself, right? Getting back to learning yourself, loving yourself again, because it's so easy to give yourself up in a relationship like that. It's so easy to be focused on their needs, what they want, what they need, to the point where you almost don't recognize yourself. I mean, I've been there. I've had those relationships, and coming out of that, you're insecure. You don't want anyone to look at you. You don't want to even be in a relationship. You can't even fathom the fact that you're going to be in a new relationship after all that abuse. But But what I will say is, if you have a great support system around you, friends, family, therapy is super important. I feel like we all need therapy on some level at some point in our lives. Maybe not our entire lives, but it is so essential to getting back to loving yourself. Because if you can't love yourself, you can't love somebody else fully. And that's the truth. And that type of relationship, I feel, is so abusive that it makes you doubt yourself, you're insecure, you don't even know who you are anymore. And you have to get back to that place. So jumping into the next relationship is a definite no. You really need to take time for yourself. I mean, I came out of a marriage and I took almost 7 years till I
Wow.
was ready to have a real relationship. And it wasn't because of those things necessarily. It was because I just needed that time to heal, because I was with that person for a very, very long time. But I do think in an abusive type of situation, jumping into the next thing, you may bring those trauma bonds into the next relationship with you, and you may end up with the same type of person because you haven't healed that part of yourself yet. And I think it's super important to heal that first.
I think you're right. And I, cognitively, so these are the things you have to do.
Right.
But being alone, so I'm not an empty nester, but I've got one son who's 22. He just graduated college. He's looking for a job and a place to live. I've got another son who's 15. He's got a girlfriend. He does basketball. He's a freshman in high school. He doesn't want to be anywhere near me most of the time. So I'm alone. I got a dog. I got my cats. I talk to my dog way too much. She's like, what the hell?
But you don't talk to your dog way too much.
What, Sarah?
I said you don't talk to your dog.
I can't.
Not possible.
No, I don't know what Sarah said because she broke up there.
You said you don't talk to your dog too much. She said it does not.
Oh yeah, okay, because she hears everything. I mean, some really good ideas. She gets some really good ideas, but then I forget them and she can't tell me what they were. So useless dog. Useless. Krista, you mentioned trauma bonding, and I find that interesting. So God, this is like sharing a lot. I'm sweating, girls. I'm glad you're here.
Woo!
Coming out of this marriage, I'm now having the realization that the emotional, the verbal, the mental, the financial abuse, I basically married my dad. So I know this is something, and it's hard to admit because you feel ashamed, because you feel like as an older person, I should have known better. I should have seen these things. But it felt so much like love at the time, deep love. In fact, I thought this was the first person I ever truly loved. And I think it was because I never got the emotional love or validation from my father, and he's passed away now. So I will never get it. We were estranged at the time of his passing. And the sad part about it is that this person knew that. He said, you don't love me. You're trauma bonded to me because I'm your dad. And yet they stayed and continued to abuse me. So I feel now like it was used as well. So it is, where do we go? So how do people know? And I see it because I see it everywhere on social media, right? That people are in unhealthy, toxic situations, but it feels so much like love. How do we know? How do we know it's not this replaying of history? Because we do that, right? We will, our brains want us to, they will try to correct an old situation that's unresolved by replaying it, right? Sarah, have you heard of that?
Absolutely. It happens. And it's like you haven't learned your lesson yet.
Yep.
But you have learned your lesson. Sometimes we are bonded to those attributes of that person. Krista said it earlier. You have to give yourself time to heal in order to realize what you really want, and going right back into a relationship with somebody who is very similar to what you tried to get away from in the first place is really difficult because, you know, we look at that type, right? Sometimes we have a type and we're very comfortable with that. And sometimes you don't want that individual or that persona to be part. So it's hard. It's really hard. And I think that for your particular situation, and for those of you who are listening out there who really resonate with what Sarah Parah Normal is saying, is that you need to give yourself some space, even if it is writing things down that you want in your life, right? Simple as that. You write it down. I want a guy who does this. I want a partner who does this. I want a woman who does this, right? To put that out into the universe is only going to let it be known that that's really what you're looking for. I don't want someone like my dad.
Yeah.
What's better than that?
Yeah. Yeah. Manifesting it. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything else, Krista?
Well, again, it just goes back to taking the time for you and making sure you've healed those wounds, because I feel like if, like she said, if you haven't learned that lesson yet, if you haven't healed those wounds yet, 9 times out of 10, you're right. We have a type. We have a type because of certain things. We have certain trauma bonds or whatever it is, certain things, PTSD, stress things that we've been through, and we're attracted to a certain type of person for certain reasons. I'm guilty of it. I've dated people that were just like my father, like you were saying. I swore I would never date my dad. And there were a couple of relationships I ended up with my father. And I love my dad. God rest his soul. He, you know, he's not here any longer either. But my parents' relationship was super toxic. They didn't have a normal relationship. And I always swore I would never want that. And at the end of the day, I ended up in almost something so similar. And it was like, how the hell did this even happen? Because I swore that's not what I wanted. But it's familiar, it's comfortable. You don't even know you're doing it in the process until you leave it. And then you leave it and it's like, whoa, big picture. And so from that point on, as long as, like she said, you're learning your lesson from it and you're healing. I mean, excuse me, I'm still sick. Sorry, guys, I'm getting over it. As long as you are moving forward and you're actually taking the time to heal yourself, then you can move forward, and then you will have a healthier relationship and you will be attracted to something different because you won't tolerate the same thing ever again. And I feel like for me personally, I've done the work. I've been through the crap. I've done all the things. I'm ready for something different. I won't accept anything less, which is probably why I'm still single. People tell me I'm picky, but it's because I've been through all the things. I've been through it. I've learned my lessons. I don't want it again. And until that relationship actually fits what I'm looking for and what I need, I'm not going to settle. And I think that's what's important. You have to know that you're worth it, that you shouldn't accept it. And you're better than that. You deserve way better than that. And that's the realization you need to come to, is that knowing your worth and knowing that you're an amazing person and you don't deserve the treatment that you're getting in the relationship. So
I had a medium tell me recently, like very recently, and she didn't know about all the history of this, but she's just like told me, you know, that the spirits were saying that if I didn't break this cycle, that I was going to come back and would have to do it all over again if I didn't learn my lesson. I was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. I mean, and I think, so there's like, I don't know if you ladies have seen, like there is a sort of, we're probably on different areas of TikTok. If you even watch TikTok, Sarah G, you're happily married, so you're probably not in the same TikToks I've been. Because like I'm very, I send them to Krista so that she can share with me. So that for women to be alone, and it comes across as a very anti-male movement, but I think the point is that a lot of women are now realizing that we are better and healthier alone than in a bad relationship. Not necessarily in a relationship, but in a bad relationship. So no relationship is better than a bad relationship. Where I kind of feel like that's not how I was raised. We're all around the same age. We got raised in that Disney princess. The prince comes to save you and everything's going to be okay. And even in the Italian culture, we were supposed to get married. We were supposed to have babies. We were supposed to serve a man. And I almost felt like growing up, my worth was not in myself. It was in gaining a man's love. That is what I feel like a lot of women of our generation were inundated with. Your worth is in the man that loves you, the man that chooses to make you his wife. You don't inherently have it by yourself. So this is why I have been married 3 times, because I was constantly looking for my worth outside of myself. And unfortunately, it took a very extreme situation. And I have in previous relationships experienced physical abuse as well. And I don't want to say one's better or worse, but I'm going to tell you what I just went through for the last 10 years damaged me more than anything ever has. And that's the truth. So we talk about loving ourselves. We talk about giving ourselves the worth. But these type of experiences, I believe, change us in some ways permanently. And they change even our brain.
Mhm.
So let's maybe move into starting a new relationship or being in that new relationship and noticing those triggers and the triggers that are ours and not necessarily our new partner. So I'd like to, Krista, I want to throw that to you first. When you started dating again, what did you bring with you that did not belong to your new partners that you realized was old stuff?
It's funny because silly things, it's little things that I didn't even know I did. And multiple people that I have dated have brought things to my attention. One of them was apologizing all the time. Like, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even know I'm doing it. I don't even know I'm doing it. And one of the times the person brought it to my attention so many times, it brought me to tears because I didn't even know that I was so careful. I felt like I was always on eggshells and I was always apologizing for everything. Oh my God, I'm going to be ready in 10 minutes. Oh my God, I'm in this, blah, blah, blah. I cried because I was like, I didn't even know I did that. So we do carry things with us and we don't mean to, but the thing is the next person isn't that person. So it's really important to try not to assume that everybody is that way. So bringing that into the next relationship or not trusting that person right out of the gate, because essentially what you're doing is you're setting it almost up for failure if you assume that everybody's the same, right? And there are some good people still left out there. I truly believe that. So you have to try to be really careful not to bring those traumas and those things into the next person because it's not fair to them. They're not the ones that caused it. They're not the ones that did that. But it's hard. You know, there are things, even myself, I've done it. Didn't even know I did it, but apologizing for everything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Girl.
Didn't even know.
Girl, I've literally apologized for apologizing.
Yeah.
Like people are going, you apologize. I'm sorry so much. And you're like, ugly cry. You're like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah G, do you have like this is in my mind right now? Does Sarah G as a medium have the upper hand in these things? Like, when you start dating, can you tell? No. Work that way.
It doesn't work that way only because I want to enjoy my human experience, right?
Right.
So
okay.
I don't like when I go out and have a good time with my friends, when I drink, when I partake in any, like I don't want to be bombarded with spirit to, influence how I'm thinking or how the person is. But I will say I still use my intuition. So if somebody's rubbing me the wrong way, no pun intended, I'm not going to continue a conversation with that person. Even when I was dating, I wouldn't force myself into that stronghold of what that person wanted. But I got to say, there were a lot of toxic relationships that I knew weren't going to go in the right direction, but I still put myself there. So you know what? We're human beings. We have to give ourselves a little bit of leeway when we're trying to figure life out, especially when it comes to relationships, because I've been with my husband for 13 years, married for 10. I am not the same person. I don't even look the same as when we met, right? And sometimes what happens is you grow with these people and then you grow separately, and you have to realize that it's more important to come back together or not. And that's okay, So if all of those toxic, flags are there and you're like, oh, I've been denying it for so long, that's a wake-up call for you. Whether or not that you're stranded in Disney World, or whether or not you've just had enough of the bullshit, you decide. And for both of you ladies, you have taken that choice and decided for yourselves. Right. Now it's like climbing out of the hole. That's what sucks. And change never feels good. Never, ever, ever does it ever feel good. Krista, you are in the beauty business. When a girl has gone through a breakup, she changes her hair color, she gets a tattoo, she cuts bangs,
gets extensions.
Right?
So true.
It's like you reinvent. And men, I find, will buy something. They'll buy something. They'll buy a Corvette. They'll buy the motorcycle. They'll buy the boat. Right? Always they buy something. Women, we change ourselves. Think about that. We change ourselves for what?
True.
Really, we're changing ourselves to love that person that we're looking at in the mirror. And that's really flipping hard to do. On a daily basis, it's hard. So it's kind of comforting to fit into the roles that are provided for us.
Amen.
Until it's not, right?
Right.
So you're climbing out of, you're climbing out of that hole, so to speak, right? In different kind of sectors and different values, but it's still always going to be an uphill battle. And Krista was right. You have to love yourself before you love anybody else. And nobody wants to hear that. That's true.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
It is. And it's not, and the reason I wanted to do this show is because I'm watching the last few weeks shows and I'm like, man, these girls have it so together. And I feel like sometimes it's good to put the raw stuff out there because it's such a day-to-day thing. Like sometimes I'm alone and I am dancing around my kitchen, cleaning my kitchen with my AirPods in. And I am so happy that no one's going to walk in the room and judge me and tell me I'm being silly. Because look, I'm silly. I like being silly. I don't want to be ashamed of who I am. I want to be free to be myself. And then there's times where I don't know who myself is. And it's just hard being alone all the time. So there's those, I think people need to be kind to themselves. There's a very much, it's very much a roller coaster. It's not like a straight path to healing. Let's see what Brian has to say.
That is true.
All right. He understands where Sarah's coming from. I was in a very abusive relationship. I think it's even more, it's even harder when the man is abused. In a way, I'm going to agree with him there only because I think people don't believe a man. I won't say it's harder personally, but people tend to not believe that men can be abused. So thank you, Brian, for sharing that. And I've met a few guys actually who have been through narcissistic abuse is very insidious. And there are men that are narcissists and there are very many women that are narcissists as well. They could be our parents. They could be our lovers. It's a sort of an insidious thing and it changes the chemistry of the victim. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to switch over to this because I was talking to Krista before the show. Sarah, you missed it. So I'm learning. I'm a research girl. So I want to know how my brain is working. So I'm looking up all the psychology facts. And I learned that when you're in a mentally abusive narcissistic relationship, the hippocampus actually shrinks. So that's the center of your brain that affects learning and memory. And I always thought, can I just say this real quick? I went to the Mayo Clinic and I spent $8,000 because I had no memory. None. I have very little memory from my childhood. I have very little memory of my children's childhoods. And then I attempted to go back to school. And I've always been a straight A student. I wasn't always the best student, but I always managed to get good grades. And I would be taking tests and I would read the question and I'd read the multiple choice answers. And by the time I got to D, I forgot what the question was. And I thought I had a brain tumor. I'm not shitting you guys. I thought I was dying. That is how bad that got. And now I'm like reading books again and I'm like, holy crap, that's true. And like Krista, you mentioned a little bit that you felt like you experienced something similar, right? And you did not realize that that actually happens, that the brain, that part of the brain actually shrinks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I feel that, and a lot of it has to do with my childhood, but there are parts of my life I don't remember. And I think it's our body's way of protecting us. It takes memories. It was explained to me this way, and I thought it was the best analogy ever. It was sort of like it's a tree, right? And so there's these little memories that come off in branches, and then everything comes off in little, like, smaller branches. And it takes one memory and puts it somewhere because it's protecting us. Our body goes into protect mode and it hides it so that we don't deal with it and we don't need it. It's like, okay, well, we're going to put it over here. But then all these other little memories attached to it, even if they're not something that's traumatic for us, they go as well because your body goes into autopilot and it just like, oh, I don't need this. I'm going to put this somewhere else. For me personally, I forget almost all of my childhood. I forget a good portion of my first relationship. There's a lot of my life I don't remember. And I've asked people in the industry and I'm like, is this something I got to worry about? Like, is this going to come back and haunt me someday? And I'm a super open. I talk about everything. I'm not ashamed anymore of things that happened when I was younger. Those weren't my choices. That wasn't my lifestyle, but it has affected relationships. I do believe that. I think it's why I was drawn to certain relationships in my past. But going forward, no, I don't believe so. I think I've learned those lessons finally. But I do believe that our body is just protecting us. And it's because of things that we've struggled with, maybe things that have dropped into our subconscious when we were young. And unfortunately, that's what happens. You forget a lot of it. But I was told that as long as, you see, I'm super open and I talk about it, I don't think that it's going to come back and haunt me someday where I'm going to have to worry, oh my gosh, am I going to have a nervous breakdown? I think as long as you're open and you're, you go to therapy or you talk to people and you're not hiding and holding it all in, that's a healthy way to deal with it. But if you're holding it in and not discussing it, that's a different story. I think that needs to be addressed. But as long as you're open and honest with yourself and with others, I feel like it's not something to be concerned with necessarily.
I really love that tree analogy because I always wondered, like, why would I forget parts of my children's childhoods that was happy, but it was attached to something else. But I don't know. Sarah G, have you ever just like had a reaction to something? And this is where I'm nervous it's going to haunt me in new relationships, is that somebody might say something to me or their tone even changes. And my body will literally, and I don't know why, start to sweat, shake. I'll get nauseous. I'll get a headache. Like, it's a way overreaction. Have you ever had something like that, Sarah G, where you're like, I'm not reacting to what's actually happening. I'm obviously reacting to something else right now.
Yes. And Krista is right by saying that those memories that are very attached to other things, because we are in an adverse situation or in an abusive relationship where the body actually memories within our body in general get it or pretend it didn't exist. So I think that you had forgotten some of your children's childhood because very many memories kind of cross in the sense of you into your kids.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you always have a mental breakdown. It has happened where I've walked into a place and like, nope, I don't like it. I don't like the vibe here. I don't like. So the thing is that as long as you start to trust that you don't, and that it's a memory, you know what? I remember this being told I'm not okay. Say no, thank you, and then you can walk out. Or you can. This is within a relationship, especially in a relationship. Those lines of communication are wide open. it's not like you've been in a relationship with somebody for 10 years, knows everything that you're going to say, or pretend what to say. Ready? So I think what happens is that at the beginning of a relationship, we say, I don't like that food, I don't like that music, I don't like that. It reminds me of somebody not anymore.
Right. Yep.
It,
So we're gonna lose her. No, you're like, we can't hear you and you're breaking up. Girl, you're doing a Krista circa like 1 month ago. She's like, I'm driving out, I'm gonna try my phone. We talked about this before the show. She's right though, Krista. Like you get stuck in those patterns. My problem right now is my body, I feel like this. Like I feel like it happens so fast. Like I'm flooded with the fight or flight hormones so fast that I'm like, before I know it, I'm there. And I'm useless at that point. Once you're in fight or flight, don't bother talking to a person. Someone explained it to me once. Like when you're in fight or flight, like you're not driving the car anymore. The car's on autopilot. Your body is literally fighting for survival. And it's very odd to the other person you might be having an argument with. They're like, why are you acting like this? You're crazy, blah, blah, blah. But your physiological reaction is something that your body had to do to literally stay alive, whether it's when we're young or in previous relationships. So your body's protecting you and you're flooded with adrenaline, which is where the sweating and the shaking, and that can happen for me with the slightest raise of the voice. Yeah. And I don't know that that's going to ever go away because that started when I was like under the age of 5. So as it's explained to me, my brain chemistry is permanently altered. So Krista, then when do you talk about these things in a new relationship? And because that's a thing, right? Too. So if you have these things and they're almost like a disability, they're not visible.
Yeah.
How do we know when the right time is to divulge this stuff? Do you wait until you have a moment? Or do you?
I feel like when you're ready, when you're comfortable enough to start opening up to that person, and I think it's all individual. I feel like you would know when you feel like that person's not going to judge you. You feel super comfortable sharing those intimate things with them. You wouldn't do that on the first date, obviously, but you would do that when you feel enough connection to the person that you feel like they're not going to judge you. You feel safe with them. I think feeling safe with them is the most important thing. Knowing that they're going to be there and they're going to listen. I hear him purring.
He's like, come check through this. I know this difficult cat's purring actually calms the nervous system.
Yes. There's a frequency.
So she's 17 years old.
Oh my gosh.
She's my OG familiar. This is Munchkin.
Oh.
And Munchkin's from Boston. She's a city girl.
Oh.
And so she's been with me through every relationship was worth anything, right?
Yeah.
Every relationship, everything else, and she must know that we're talking about something. Yeah. I wanted to just interject and add a little bit of a high point. When you burp or fart in front of this person, that's when you should be sharing some of these things.
I don't do those things. I don't do them.
That's awesome.
If you feel like you are going to, then that's when you say these things, because everybody has trauma. Everybody's got shit that they carry, and everybody burps and farts at some point. I mean, Krista, you are a princess on a pillow.
Not on purpose. It's maybe in my sleep, but that's not happened on purpose ever.
I, however, bent over to get something at Dollar General yesterday. So,
but I'm saying when you are in a relationship or that you're talking to somebody and you feel comfortable enough to be yourself, that you're letting a bodily function happen, then you should have those conversations about what your triggers are, or what it is that you've come from. Because at that point, if they decide to bolt, then you're like, hey, you know what? I spoke my truth. I said who I really was, and this is what's happened to me. More often than not, you will know that person has something that they resonate with based on what you've said, right?
Right.
Based on what you said. You agree?
No.
I know you don't fart, Krista, but I think that might be one of the best pieces of relationship advice I have literally ever gotten. Like, how do you know when you burp and fart? Like, it's like
so funny.
the first time you have to leave your house.
I'm like when you feel comfortable and safe. Same thing, burp and fart, comfortable and safe.
Yeah, but when you're comfortable enough to literally let your body functions be your body functions in front of a person, then you should be able to say, hey, this is what's going on with me, and I had some issues, and this is what I really don't like. If you start off the gate with all of that, then you're not gonna, that's not gonna work.
No, you're probably gonna scare them off. I know you're probably gonna scare someone off if you're like, here's all my trauma. I mean,
right. All right.
I guess part of it about the show is people can go watch it now. It's like everyone's gonna know. So,
but honestly, but it doesn't matter. See, it's cathartic to get it out, Sarah. So, like what you're doing, even though it's in a public forum, it still feels good.
It does.
It feels good that you're telling people exactly what's been, and we scratch the surface. That's just tip of the iceberg. We do not know the 10 years of trauma that you've experienced, but we can see that you're trying to get out of that situation and out of that thing to the other side. And that's what's more important. Somebody's going to see value in that. You're worth it. You're worth it. And it's just going to come on what you've already worked on for yourself.
I love that. I love all that. All that. Burping and farting. And what did Brian say? If you fart in front of your partner and they stick around, you're a good fart. That is true. But listen, look, this is my thing. We're going to take a sideway into burping and farting for a quick second here because it's all been a bit heavy. Like, if you, you're all up in my personal area, businesses, other bodily functions. Look, don't be grossed out by burping and farting. It's just some gas, okay? Jeez.
Because you're older, your approach, right?
Yeah.
Right? We're women. We want what we want. We want it the way that we want it. We went through the trial and error periods. So no thanks.
I don't know if we should all disclose how yes, Mike, my businesses, my areas that are covered, my covered areas. Should we all go around and compare how long we've actually held a fart for? Because I've done it for a really long time.
Well, Chris is still holding one in. But she wins.
At least until you leave my house. I mean, that's not happening while you're at my house. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, no, I mean,
or somewhat thing. There has to be a closet you can go into, Krista, like the fart closet, like the one that's furthest away.
I'll torture my own life. I'll torture my life before that happens.
I would go. I would be like, I gotta run to the gas station for something just so I could go in my car and fart.
But you should be having a conversation with the person you're dating about why it is that you don't like somebody to order your food for you or something like that, like.
Oh my god.
Oh, girls. This
dear.
That was the comedic interlude segment on burping and farting, brought to you by legitpodcast.com. Please like and subscribe so you can learn more about our bodily functions. Over to you, Michael.
That's a whole nother show.
That's another whole topic. Oh my god.
But back to the heaviness of what that it is. this is difficult. This is tough.
Yeah.
This is something that doesn't happen overnight. And, if you have been experiencing any sort of trauma in any sort of way that you do not like, you have a voice that you can use. Obviously, there's the National Domestic Abuse Hotline shown below that you can utilize, as well as local shelters or even any advocacy group, say that 5 times fast, within your area. Family and friends, if they are supportive, of course, that's going to be your best bet.
Let me give some pieces of advice I got during my marriage. Don't cry. Don't make him mad. Stuff like that. So when you see family and friends that are going to be supportive, yeah, sometimes I think they don't get it. Like sometimes I think unless it's physical, and this was something I struggled with, unless there's a bruise, it's hard to express how much pain you're in. So yeah, definitely try to go to your loved ones. They want to be there for you if they're supportive, or maybe they just can't understand it. So if you need to, call the professionals. It took a therapist to say to me, you don't have to live like this. And I had been in therapy the whole time because I was so depressed. The problem is that I was always covering for him. So I was never telling my therapist everything that was going on, because I was ashamed of myself for staying, and I was covering for him, partly because I knew it was wrong and partly because I believed that the abuse was my fault and that I deserved it. So let's make that clear. No one deserves to be made to feel unsafe in their own home. You don't have to live like that, whether it's physical actions or threatening words, period. Krista, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to make sure we're talking about? Because it's like 10 minutes too.
I mean, maybe, and I would have done this in the beginning, but maybe what are some of the signs that we need to look for in our relationships that would give us a little bit of insight into what an abusive relationship actually does look like?
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, jealousy, controlling right away would be one of them. Sort of trying to keep tabs on everything you do right away, making you feel guilty every time you step out of your home, things like that. Like, what were some of the things that you would say were maybe in the forefront in the beginning that maybe you overlooked because you thought, oh, no, this will get better? Or, I mean, because that's important. We all overlook a lot in the beginning.
Well, the big thing is that in the beginning, love bomb, love bomb, love bomb, love bomb. Writing songs, flying overnight to where I was to be like the knight in shining armor, and lots and lots of love bombing. And then it slowly starts with the name calling, and it became just like, oh, he really loves me. And he just got so angry because he loves me so much. And it could have just been nothing, or there could have been an argument. But I actually did not know that calling me, and I'm going to say bad words here, a whore, a bitch, and a cunt in a relationship was not normal. It's not. You shouldn't be called those names by someone that says they love you ever. And I didn't know that. I didn't. It's sad, but it's true. And I think a lot of people understand that. So I know that now because I've been fortunate enough to have friends like you guys and meet people that are like, no, people shouldn't call you those names.
Right.
So the love bombing that became, he wasn't jealous per se, but he was very controlling about money. I had an allowance. I did not have access to the finances. Early on, there was a lot of threatening to leave, which I think is a big thing. So manipulation by, I'm going to hurt myself, threatening to break up with you or leave the relationship every time there's an argument. There was always something that I had to do to keep his favor, like there was a return. I guess things like that, if I can think of them right now. It's crazy, right? Like it's crazy, Sarah, that I didn't know that somebody should not be calling me those names.
Well, the initial love bombing, I call that the honeymoon phase, where everything is wonderful and the gifts and the flowers and the flying to where you are and you're so beautiful. Oh my God, you're so funny. All of that. That's boosting you up only to knock you down, which is part of what a narcissist likes to do. Flipping and reversing is part of that too. And I think that some of the other things that you are now recognizing with that doesn't mean that you were, were fleeced. It doesn't mean that you should have seen it. Nobody, I wouldn't see it. Krista wouldn't see it. Anybody, you wouldn't see it. Like nobody would see it because that's what they're good at. They're really good at that. And some of the other things that I want to point out are if any sort of substance becomes into play, whereas that person is a different person when they're drinking or when they're going, right? So that happens too. Also that dichotomy or that, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, they're a different person when they're around people than what they are. Why did you say that? Why did you tell them that? Like you're constantly being looked at and monitored, and that's part of the game too. You never know when that other shoe or an anvil is going to drop. So that's the point. That's what they want. They want to keep you on your toes and keep you second guessing. And don't ever fault yourself for not seeing those signs or triggers in the beginning of the relationship because they're really good at what they do. That's why they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So true.
It's so true.
My gosh. I have used those words, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
It is though. I have too. It's I'm going to say, and I heard someone else on TikTok explain it like this too. If I looked close enough, the eyes would change. His eyes actually look different.
Wow.
And it was terrifying.
And that's the point. That's what he wanted. He wanted to have you in control. And by having you in control was to negate everything you say, lie, gaslight, make you feel that you couldn't say something in public, that you couldn't be a certain way in public, that you couldn't spend money.
I was always embarrassing him. I was an embarrassment. Yep.
Right. And so that's part of the game so that you don't know what the right thing is because there's never a right thing. That's the thing. And there's been relationships that I've been in with people that I've, been in a romantic relationship with, but there's also relationships, and you may see this knowing that you both have suffered trauma at a younger age, that the adults around you do the same thing, So it's coming at all angles. You wouldn't have known it. There's no way you would have known it until you got through it. Right?
Yep.
And that's what you're doing.
Yep.
So like an arrow, you get pulled back only to go forward. So if you think about it like that, I'm just going back in time to go forward, to get out of it. You might not remember all of the things that happened to you. You might not have a clear picture, and that's perfectly fine.
I love that.
You don't need to.
Sarah G, which MD, we're going to add therapist to the end of that now. That was so good because the arrow is such a good analogy because there's all that tension when you pull an arrow. It takes an extreme amount of tension and force to pull it back in order to propel it forward. So, God, I like that. Krista, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think tonight's show was amazing. I think we covered everything that we set out to do tonight, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that we took on like a stronger subject tonight because sometimes we do a little fluffy, but this was really good to dive into tonight. I think it's super important for men and women all across the board because we've all experienced it at some point. Maybe not all of us, but most of us have on some level experienced it. So no, thank you ladies so much. It's fantastic tonight.
And it's to varying degrees, and it's never about comparing stories. And if one person has it worse to another, pain is pain. Right. It's part of the human experience. It's what we take that pain and we do with it that matters.
So true. That's right.
And I certainly hope that I feel I'm not going to say I'm 100% okay, but I want to just take a minute and thank the amazing support that I've gotten from my friends at Legit Podcasts, especially King Miguel and Nicole, his wife, and all of you guys. Black Island Rick, Sarah G, Krista, Jenny and Mike Atkins.
Yeah.
Everyone's checked on me. Everyone's made sure I'm okay. We're a family, guys. And that's what family is for. So if you don't have blood family that's supporting you, family comes in, and I'm not saying I don't. My parents are supportive, but parents are parents. We know that. Sometimes they don't want to see everything because it's painful for them. But if you have a chosen family, a group of friends that loves and supports you for who you are, and you can find a group like we have here, then you're truly, truly blessed, as I am, to have all of you. So thank you.
Aww, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, love you, family. You guys have been amazing. Thank you for letting me get this off my chest. I feel like tonight was a really big step and an important part of that journey for me because, like Sarah G said, speaking my truth out loud, there is such power in that. It's reclaiming your own self, your own sense of security. So again, thank you, ladies, for listening to me and sharing this with me tonight. Sarah G, is there anything you want to promote, talk about?
Come see me on Tuesdays. I'm always, up for some conversation when it comes to things witchy and wonderful. It's Tarot Tuesday tomorrow, so I will be on at 8:05, and that's really it I have going on.
Yep, and
I can't wait for you to do our readings.
I know. Oh my God, we're gonna have to schedule that too. Yeah, we're gonna schedule that for sure.
Maybe we should come on your show to do that.
Ooh, good idea.
Yeah, we'll do whatever you want, however you want to do it.
All right, we're going to see when you have open, and then the Legit ladies will come on Sarah G, Witch MD, and you can do our love readings, and maybe we could talk about love stuff.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
speaking of love, there he is.
Oh. Hi. Thank you for letting us have your wife for a little while.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Krista, how about you? Anything else you're up to that you want to promote? Your business, maybe? Where do people go to get their beautiful hair done?
Wait on that. I'm so busy right now. I don't know if I can take anyone yet.
She's that busy. She's that busy.
It's been crazy lately. It's just because the spring is back and everybody's like, oh my God, coming out of the woodwork. I can't even keep up right now. So
yeah, they've I've been a swamp witch, as Sarah would say, all winter, and now I need my hair done.
It's a blessing, but
it is a blessing.
Hypnotherapy next week.
Yes. So again, please like and subscribe at Legit Podcasts on YouTube, at Legit Podcast, DOTCOM on social media. We are also streaming on the Parapost Network. Sarah G's show, The Legit Witch is on tomorrow night at 8:05. So make sure you catch that. And what else we got going on? We have a secret investigation in the works for May that will be teaming up with Ghost Sisters. And then in July, the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash that's coming up. We're getting all of our wonderful merch and hosts together to come down to Gettysburg to support that great cause. So for Sarah G, Witch MD, and therapist, for the beautiful, the intelligent, the wonderful Krista, I am Sarah Parah Normal. Thank you to the audience for sharing in my story with me tonight and all of our stories. Have a beautiful night. Don't forget, if you need help, call that number. Have a good night, everyone.